And today's second presentation is entitled ISO 19650 and its relation with the public procurement law, and it will be delivered by Dr. Justyna Pożarowska, General Counsel at the Public Procurement Office.
Good morning to colleagues from Visegrad Group. Today I would like to share with you some thoughts on the relationship between the new ISO standard 19650 and the new public procurement law of 2019. As we know, since 2018, subsequent parts of the ISO standard have been published. The standard addresses organization and digitalization of information about buildings and civil engineering works, including information modeling. And parallel to this publication, the Polish Committee for Standardization adopts subsequent parts of ISO as Polish standards. So far, 4 parts of the standard have been adopted in Poland, and we have here concepts and principles: delivery phase of the assets, operational phase of the asset, security-minded approach to information management. And parallel to the ongoing publication of the standard in Poland, the new public procurement law was adopted on September 11, 2019, and it entered into force on January 1st, 2021. And this act introduces management elements unknown to earlier legislation in the field of public procurement, which seem to be very consistent with those elements indicated in ISO standard. In our new public procurement law, we have references to BIM in Article 69, and these references are based on procurement directives. And basically, the article says that in the case of contracts for works or design contest, the contracting authority may require the preparation and submission of tenders or contest projects using BIM tools. In practice, this means that individual contracting authorities may require the use of BIM tools in their own procurement procedures. However, if we try to go a little deeper, we will see that in public procurement law, there are many new elements supporting the management function of relevance to public procurement, what is very compliant with the ISO standard. It seems worth comparing the ISO standard and public procurement law from a management point of view, and that's something what I would like to do here. Here we have the scheme of the information management during the delivery phase of assets. It looks in this way, and the process is divided into activities and performed in stages. In information management, according to ISO, we have following activities. That's the assessment and need. Secondly, invitation to tender, tender response, appointment, mobilization, collaborative production of information, information model delivery, and project closeout. On the side of the public procurement law, we have following tools and activities that are equivalent to those indicated in the standard. And here we have needs and requirements analysis, notice and documentation preparation, evaluation and the selection of the best tender, procurement contract, contract performance stage, and performance report. Now we can compare this element and to see how they correspond between each other. So on the side of the ISO 19650, as a first activity, we have assessment and need, and on the side of the public procurement law, we have needs and requirements analysis. This analysis is a new tool, and it is intended to improve the management of public procurement from the very early stage of its planning. And such analysis is obligatory for contracts above the EU thresholds, while below the thresholds it is optional. And so when performing these kinds of analysis, contracting authorities should consider BIM as an alternative to typical performance of works contract, as a manner to include social, environmental, or innovative aspects in the contract, and also as a tool to manage risk related to the procedure and to contract performance stage. Another tool fitting very well with the stage of need identification, that's the preliminary market consultation. All before mentioned issues that should be addressed within the assessment or analysis, the contracting authority may and should discuss with potential contractors as part of preliminary market consultation. It seems that especially in cases where the contracting authority has not had previous experience in conducting investment with the use of BIM, initial market consultation should be a necessity, and they should contribute to the vision of BIM investment, to additional knowledge about BIM tools and BIM methodology. Here, second step, and on the side of the ISO, we have invitation to tender, and on the side of the public procurement law, corresponding step will be the elaboration of notice and procurement documentation. So the previous steps, preliminary market consultation and needs and requirements analysis, should be translated to the procurement documents. And on the side of the procurement law, we have here a new kind of the procurement documents, which is a description of needs and requirements. It is used in two-stage procedures and replaces a clear and detailed description of the subject of the contract. And after the negotiations or dialogue, uncertain or undecided details of the description should become clearer to the contracting authority and translated into the terms of contract. The negotiations and dialogue based on the description give the contracting authorities and contractor additional space, which is very important in case of BIM projects. And this space should be used for a final specification of the subject of the contract and different kind of requirements and conditions. Next activity, that's the tender response, and on the side of procurement law, evaluation and selection of the best tender. It is important to stress that the tendering stage depends on the procedure chosen by the contracting authority. And open procedure is the most popular for works contract in Poland, and this is mainly because it is the fastest one. However, this is not the most BIM-friendly procedure. And several other procedures are more appropriate because they give much more space for interaction between contracting authorities and potential contractors. So here we have a negotiations with publication and also competitive dialogue. Both are based on the description of needs, and in later stage, after negotiation or after dialogue, this description is changed into the terms of contract. Another to supporting this tendering stage is a design contest, and it's important to say that the design contest has changed a lot in the new public procurement law, and now design contest in our law can be an open or limited, and also one or two stage. And in context of BIM, the best one seems to be a design contest that is limited and two-stage. Why? Basically because here we do a double selection. First, the selection of potential contractors, and in the second step, the selection of projects, which first are assessed based on the conceptual studies, and in the second step, in form of design projects. Below the threshold, we have a new procedure, so-called basic procedure. It seems that the variant second and third of this procedure are especially BIM-friendly. Variant second, it's a possibility to negotiate, and third, it's an obligation to negotiate. In variant two, contractors have the option of submitting an additional offer that contains new proposal, and in variant 3, the negotiations are based on the description of need, which is later detailed to the form of the terms of the contracts, on the basis of which the final offer is submitted. Next activity on the side of ISO, it's appointment, and corresponding on the side of the public procurement law will be procurement contract. In terms of the procurement contract, perhaps it's important to say that we have a new rule in the law, which is the obligation of parties to cooperate. Basically, based on this rule, the contracting authority and the economic operator selected in the procedure both are obliged to cooperate with the aim to properly perform the contract. This rule will be also applicable to all activities, also these which form the information cooperation based on the BIM model. Next, on the side of ISO, we have 3 activities. That is mobilization, collaborative production of information, and information model delivery. On the side of the procurement law, these 3 stages will correspond to the contract performance stage. We have to say that legislation on public procurement generally doesn't regulate the stage of implementation of procurement contract. In PP law, we are dealing basically with the procurement procedure and not with contract performance or contract implementation. Nevertheless, the Act contains some provision touching upon the performance stage, and one of them are provision on the amendment or modification of the contract. And from the point of view of BIM, important could be the fact that the law indicates that modification are possible if some conditions are fulfilled, and these conditions mainly are 4, and modification are allowed if they are foreseen in the contract notice or contract documents, if they specify the type and scope of modifications, if they lay down the conditions for introducing modifications, and if they don't modify the general nature of the contract. And the last activity on the side of ISO is a project closeout, and here two issues are indicated: archivization of the project information model and compilation of lessons learned for future projects. And on the side of public procurement law, here we have a new obligation to prepare a report on the contract performance. And this report is obligatory if the higher value has been spent for the contract than the one foreseen in the tender, if the contractual penalties have been imposed on the economic operator, if there were some delays in performance of the contract, and where the contracting authority or economic operator has withdrawn or terminated the contract in whole or in part. In such situation, it is obligatory to prepare a report, and in this kind of report, the contracting authority needs to conclude on a possible change in the manner of performing future contracts. To conclude, it seems that there is a lot of mutual coherence and complementarity between ISO and PP law processes. And among the management elements provided for in the new public procurement law and consistent with ISO, the most appropriate are the need and requirements analysis, preliminary market consultation, a report on the contract performance, and the description of needs and requirements. On the other side, on the BIM-friendly procurement procedure consistent with objective of new standard are negotiations with publication, competitive dialogue, design contest, basic procedure in its variant with possible negotiations, and in the variant with obligation to negotiate. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Justyna, for this presentation. As we can see, Polish public procurement law is highly compatible according to standard 16950. So we cannot say that elsewhere in the world BIM investment projects are easier to implement, because here we also have mechanisms which can help us in efficiently start with BIM methodology on our public projects. Thank you once again.